Ah, the open road. It calls to everyone, but it's no place to kid around. And Gus isn't your ordinary kid. He knows a man has to go.
Want to play with me? Beat it, kid.
Where a man has to go.
I play Motorama. Spelled out Motorama, grand prize of $500 million. Motorama, come on in.
Just how did you make enough money to buy a fancy set of wheels like that?
I sold my stamp collection.
But there's more than one game on the road.
Hey, old pirate.
Old pirate?
Billy, you say win. Win?
I thought you said you were going to let me win a little bit.
I lied. Loss builds character. You don't have a girl with you, do you?
No.
He plays Motorama.
Say, mister, can we borrow your back seat for a quickie?
I've got a long way to go. This contest will never expire.
Martha Quinn, Garrett Morris, Michael J. Pollard, Flea of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Drew Barrymore, Meatloaf, and introducing Jordan Christopher Michael. Motorama, the ultimate road odyssey, from the writer of After Hours.
Fill her up?
No, empty it.
Welcome to They Called Us a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Called Us a Movie. We are part of the Main Damie Network, and to find more from us, check out the website at themaindamie.com or on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Main Damie. We are also now a proud member of Geek Vibes Nation, and you can find them at gbnation.com. Welcome back to They Called Us a Movie. This is Anthony Delvecchio, and with me as always is Dan Aquino and Mark Myers. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello, friends.
Hello. This week, I think I found out that watching a movie like this while playing a video game that I'm playing right now doesn't really mix, because I don't think I got the same enjoyment out of it the two of you have. But we'll get into that later.
Oh, great. Mark paid half attention to this movie.
Way to tell on yourself, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm more leaning towards that I probably didn't like it.
All right. Well, wow. Okay. Well, before we get into the movie that we watched this week, what else have you guys been watching? I know Mark's answer already.
Yeah, it was a slow week for me. I binge watched F is for Family on Netflix, and man, that show, I don't know how it gets away with a lot of the stuff it does. They're very on the edge with what they get away with. It's a pretty good show. I don't know if it'll be picked up again for another season or if it already has, but I'm a big Bill Burr fan, and I'm glad to see him kind of getting his due now.
Was this a new season or?
Yeah, the fourth season came out a week or two ago, I want to say.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, it's they introduced Bill Burr's character's father, played by the gentleman who, I forget his name in Breaking Bad, but he's like the cleaner, the bald guy who used to be a cop.
Okay, yeah, Mike. For some reason, I can't think of his real name.
Mike Wazowski.
Airman Trout.
Oh, okay.
Airman Trout.
He was, yeah. But he's got an awesome voice, and he plays Frank's father, who was just a total dick to him as a kid. And then he shows up, and he's all super nice to everybody, and it's just an interesting plot. I mean, if you had a dickhead as a dad, then it probably hits home, but none of us had that, so maybe it doesn't resonate as much. But it was a good season.
Okay. I've never watched that show.
Yeah, I don't think it would be up your alley, to be honest.
Okay.
Prove me wrong, though.
That means I would have to watch it.
Right, and then I win.
What about you, Mark?
The creators of F for Family in that.
That's a good point.
It's true. Mark, tell us how you haven't watched a damn thing because you've been playing The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, I have been doing nothing but playing The Last of Us Part 2, and that includes things I should be doing for Game Ball Pod. I've said it on every broadcast that I've been on, podcast or stream. That game is a lot. If it was a movie, it would be way too intense because the way they spread it out gives you time to process things, as though if they tried to condense it into a 2-hour movie, it would be like Crank in a sense, in that the adrenaline's just going and going and going. They have shocking moments, but they aren't done for shock value. Like, they all have a reason for occurring, and it's all correct for the situations they're in. The acting's superb. I've been saying this the whole time. By having them do it as though it's like a play on the sound stage with all the little dots on them to motion capture, really sets us apart in terms of video game stuff. It makes it, in some of the cutscenes, probably if you're watching 4K, look as close to a movie as a video game could get. Probably a good CGI movie. I've been on an emotional roller coaster between playing that, then watching this movie that we're doing for this podcast, and then, having to watch Tom play Luigi's Mansion last night on stream. So my emotions have been really up and down. That game's real good. I'm pushing through it, so I'm probably doing it a lot faster than most people will. You should probably take breaks playing that game. So I highly recommend it if you like the first game. It doesn't have as much impact if you don't play the first game. It's one of the first sequels to a video game that does that.
Can I say real quick?
Yeah. Sure.
Tom has been killing it on the streams.
Yeah.
His WWE, I think it was like 2001 stream was so funny. Yeah. Because if obviously our listeners may not know Tom, but when he plays games, he gets more and more frustrated as the game goes on. And it's perfect streaming content. You have to listen to it. It's the best.
Yeah.
Friend of the show. He was on our Sonic the Hedgehog episode. Yeah. Shout out to Tom. But in terms of what I watched, I haven't really watched much this week. We had a short week this week because we recorded last Thursday and now we're recording on Tuesday. Not to show everybody how the sausage is being made. So we actually have a shortened week. But the one thing I have been watching, I've been getting into, and this is the second time I've attempted to, is Twin Peaks. I've been watching it on Netflix. I've just finished the first season, and I like it, but it hasn't grabbed me yet. I know people love it, and there's like a cult following for it, and I know the Showtime third season, snooty critics were trying to call it cinema rather than television show because they think for some reason TV still has that stigma. It's good, but...
Is the gentleman from Twin Peaks also in Dune?
Kyle MacLachlan, yes.
Okay. I
Both
totally forgot
by David
that
Lynch.
I totally forgot I watched Dune over the weekend because that movie was god awful.
There you go.
Yeah, so I don't understand why people liked him.
They're making a new Dune.
Yeah, that's why I kind of watched it. I was like, I got to see what I totally blanked on it. But there's like a giant fetus in it. I don't know if either of you have seen it.
No.
Don't do yourself a favor. Don't. It's like 2.5 hours of just pure nonsense.
You're talking about Showgirls, Kyle MacLachlan.
Was he in that too? I can't remember. That guy is just, he fades into the background.
Yeah, I had to look it up on IMDb just to make sure I wasn't having a Dermot Mulroney, Dylan McDermott situation.
Yeah, he kind of fits into that. He's good. There's actually Jack Nance from this movie that we've watched today is in Twin Peaks. He has a major role. But yeah, like I'm really waiting for that turn where it clicks for me. I think I'm up and down with David Lynch. There are movies that I love from him, and there's movies that I think are fine. I think Blue Velvet is fine. I really enjoy Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive. I think are excellent films. But yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm hoping it. I've got a second season left, so I'm probably gonna suffer through it. Not really suffer through it, but I'm gonna watch through it, and hopefully by the end it clicks. But yeah, that's really all I've watched this week. So that's what I've watched this week. Not much, but this week was my week again, and I think it's become a common thing where I pick the weirdest movies that we'll pick, and this was no exception. This week, I picked a movie I've never heard of before, but reading the description and seeing who had their names attached to it, I kind of had to go with it. There was a movie that I wanted to pick, but it kind of disappeared for Prime, so hopefully maybe it'll show back up once again, and then we'll be able to pick it. But I went with 1991's Motorama, directed by Barry Shills, who directed two other movies, which were both documentaries, but he was a producer on Vampire's Kiss, and was written
Ooh.
by Joseph Minion, who also wrote Vampire's Kiss as well as After Hours. So, gentlemen, Motorama, what do you think of it?
Before I say where I'm coming from, I want to say you totally redeemed yourself from your last pick to this pick.
Okay.
Because you just went from one extreme to the other, whereas in Love on a Leash was just putrid and a crime against cinema. This one is just totally absurd in the fun way. So I want to thank you for that.
Okay.
I've never seen it, and I'm happy that I did, because this had that balance where it was like a sandwich, where I hated it at the beginning, loved the middle, loved that juicy middle, and then despised the end. It's like we had the end of the bread. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you had a heel
Yeah,
piece?
I had the heel piece at just finishing the sandwich. So man, I am very excited to get into this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Mark.
I
can't wait to hear this one.
I had no idea about this movie, and I didn't want to read anything on it going in. So maybe I should have. Maybe it would have helped my expectations going in. I spent most of the movie trying to figure out exactly where it was set, because it looked like America, but I think he was paying with Canadian money, because I don't think that was dollars he was paying with. So that was throwing me off. There were parts, except for that whole middle chunk where it just became absurd after absurd after absurd. The beginning bored me, and then the end, much like Dan, I was like, now it just feels like a giant waste of my time that they did that ending. I was more bored by it than I thought I would be. I couldn't really get into it. The part with Meatloaf was fun, and then that's about it. It's the only real cameo that I remember being any good. There were a couple others, but I never got grabbed by it at any point.
Okay. If I was a real dick, I'd make you do the plot of this movie, because I can't imagine that you'd be able to.
All you would have to do, Mark, is say, kid just gets his ass kicked. He goes from one point to getting his ass kicked to another point where he gets his ass kicked to a third point just getting his ass kicked.
I think I could get all the points of the movie. I don't know if I would get them in the correct order.
So for me, one thing about me, I love road movies. Just that kind of episodic open road sort of thing. I really love it. So this movie won me over there at the beginning, and then you have the star of it, Jordan Christopher Michael, who is not a household name, but I've seen Full House from beginning to end, the entire series, maybe like a half dozen times, if not more. And Jordan Christopher Michael plays Rusty, the Rust Man, the Master of Disaster, in like a 3-episode arc where he just playing the kid that Danny's dating his mom, and he's a huge asshole in that series arc. So I recognize him, and then have all the names on it that I'm going to go through in a second. And I love absurdist movies, like movies that just they throw weird things at you, not unlike Twin Peaks, where weird shit happens and there's really barely an explanation for it. I was totally into like the beginning does it drags in the beginning, but then I don't even know where the turn is, but it gets better and better. For me, the ending I loved. I don't know if it was better than the middle part, but I like how it was. There is some sort of morality tale it tries to tell at that point, which I appreciate them trying to tie that up like that. And just the weirdness of everything was cool to me. He's going to states that are fictional states. Mark, they were using Dutch currency, even though they shot it completely in the American Southwest. So it's supposed to be America, but it's like a alternate universe America, because there are states called like Essex and Bergen and other names. But yeah, no, it's super weird, and I kind of love that. So yeah, it's directed by Barry Shills, written by Joseph Minion, and starring Jordan Christopher Michael and a bunch of people that have a bunch of cameos. Martha Quinn, John Deal, Jack Nance, Robert Picardo, Garrett Morris, Flea, Mary Warrenov, who is second time showing up on the show. We covered Night of the Comet, which she was in. Meatloaf and Dick Miller. IMDb score of 6.5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 60%. Budget. Its widest opening was in 2 theaters, and it made $10,535. So basically the basic premise of this movie is that this kid, he is leaving an abusive home, which we hear in voiceover, and he steals his dad's car, or his mom's car. We really don't know whose car it is, but we're going to assume it's his dad's Mustang. And he just hits the open road. And then he hears about this contest, Motorama contest, that is being run by some gas company, that he has to collect the letters that spell out Motorama. And if he does, he's supposed to win $500 million. And it's episodic from there. He tries to hit up and down these fictional states, but it's basically the American Southwest. California, it's Arizona, Nevada, and all that. Hitting every gas station he can in order to pick these. It's kind of like the McDonald's Monopoly game. He's trying to find Boardwalk, essentially. And it's a really simple storyline. It's a lot of him driving, him stopping in random areas, and then interacting with familiar face, and then moving on to the next one. It's kind of cool, but super weird, and I loved it.
Yeah, I'll give the movie this. I never knew where it was going with its plot, because like you said, it is very episodic, but you'd never know what he's going to get into.
Yep. And
who he's going to run afoul, I'll say, because everyone he meets just treats him like total garbage.
Oh yeah.
What is he, 10 years old, 12 years old?
10.
He's 10. And everyone treats him as if he were a grown man.
Yep. Yeah, like literally people just think he's small. The first person he tells he's 10, I think the only person he tells he's 10 is just blindsided by the idea that this kid, who is obviously a kid, is 10 years old. So last week we had Escape from LA, and we mentioned how light of an R rating that movie was. This movie earns its R rating.
Oh,
this kid says fuck a couple times. He says shit. He says damn a lot. And we see tits. I was not expecting a movie where our lead is a 10-year-old boy and we see tits.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he was trying to find the set of Tiptoes.
Yeah,
maybe.
And essentially they did a quick cut of an orgasm taking place during that scene of him finding the O card.
Yeah, there is something really weird juxtaposing a woman orgasming with a kid getting really excited about finding a card that he's been looking for. Very odd.
There's something about it where I love the absurdity where these people, these two young people are just saying, hey, can we use your car for a quickie in the middle of, broad daylight, a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't even answer. They're like, we're going to do it anyway. I wish I had that kind of courage to do that.
The 90s were wild, man.
I don't remember them being that wild.
Yeah, that's just one of the many weird moments in this movie.
Do you think the kid found them? Or do you think they left before? I
don't know. It's a good question. Because
what are these seats in the back of the car? Where did these come from?
Why is it sticky back here?
Right. I don't remember that. Must have spilled something.
This spills soda? My dad's going to kill me.
I thought this movie was going to be a horror movie when it started.
It starts off like a horror movie, and I have that in my notes. Yeah.
Because the soundtrack is very heavy, very like dark sounding, and you just hear bottles being broken, the mother screaming, the father berating her, and then there's like sparks flying. Like, oh shit! Like, what did Aunt get me into? Did he not know what this movie was?
You know what this movie wound up reminding me of? The movie North. You remember that?
Yes.
Elijah Wood.
God.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Bruce Willis vehicle.
Yeah.
God, that movie was awful.
That's a famous director's movie too, and I can't think of who it is. I feel like it's like Francis Ford Coppola, but I might be thinking of Jack.
I think, I know he did Jack, Francis Ford Coppola. I don't remember who did North, but oof, man, that movie was brutal. This movie, I like this movie more than North.
I mean, I haven't seen North in 25 years, but I remember liking it as a kid. Rob Reiner directed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And his father is Jason Alexander?
Yep, and his mom is Julia
Louis-Dreyfus. Yeah.
Jussie Smollett is in this movie.
Wait, in what? North? Oh, how? That's weird. We don't want to go any further.
Yeah, we're just gonna mention it and move on.
He was in it. Let's go. Yeah. So this movie is pretty fun too, guys.
Yeah. Do you want to get into the plot at this point?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. What do you got for us this week, Dan?
Okay, fellas, if you've been listening to our podcast, and by the numbers, you have, you know that we like to talk about our good friend Tia, who has her own podcast on Geek Vibes Nation. She's a good friend of the show. Her podcast is called Top 10 with Tia, where her and her friends get together and break down top 10 lists. So top 10 directors, top 10 villains, you name it, they have it. So go check them out and give her a shout out.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to take a few moments to listen to some friends of the podcast, but then we'll be right back with the plot of Motorama.
Hey, this is Ken M.
Padawan J.
Coach Duffy. From the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. Every week, the ODPH is talking sports, movies, TV, comics, and more. It's always a parlay of topics on each episode. You can find the ODPH on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever you find great podcasts, such as the one you're listening to right now. Don't forget to check out OchoDuroParlayHour.com, where you can find the links to all of the ODPH social media accounts, links to the bands whose music you hear each week on the show, hashtag 607 podcast info, and parlay points, our companion blog section of the show. Thanks for listening to the ODPH. Now get back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Welcome, travelers. Seems like you're looking for a story. Well, I got one for you. It involves adventure, friendship, and all sorts of...
Earl, why don't you tell him about that time I stole that big-ass melon?
Yeah, I was going for more...
Or you could tell him about the time I kicked her ass, Earl.
I wouldn't ever tell them.
Do I need to get my ref gear on?
Okay, everyone, shut up. Now come with me as I tell you a story from afar. Hey everybody, my name's David. I'm the DM for From Afar Podcast. From Afar Podcast is all about four friends separated by distance, but brought together by adventure. Hope you all stop by and give us a listen. Thanks.
And welcome back. And now it's time to get into the plot of Motorama. We open on what seems like a horror movie as we get macro shots of tools being used in ominous high-key lighting. We have hands hard at work on something, but no faces. And a couple that's only in off-screen, only in VO. They argue and they throw bottles at each other. It is violent as fuck, as Dan mentioned earlier. And then we cut away. A kid plops down a ton of rolled-up change at the bank, asking for large bills, please. The bank teller is averse at doing her job as she sits there filing her nails, and she says, just because you counted them doesn't mean I'm going to take your word for it. I have to count them, and that's going to take hours. And then he says, okay, then do your fucking job, lady. And she begrudgingly does so.
And by the way, if they were looking for this to be like a cameo thing, maybe it was in 1991, but I had no idea that was Martha Quinn.
That is Martha Quinn, one of MTV's first VJs. Yeah. Definitely doesn't look like Martha Quinn would look like on MTV. She looks like a standard kind of mousy bank teller. But yeah, it's Martha Quinn. Eventually, she begrudgingly counts the money. And then we cut to the kid counting some weird-looking money in the driver's seat of a Mustang. These were Dutch guilders, which was a pre-European Union Dutch currency.
Yeah.
Lots of colorful money.
Is there a reason why they chose to use non-American currency?
I'm guessing because they already have these states that aren't real American states. They kind of wanted to create another part of the world building, I guess, that just kind of add to the fantasy aspect of this movie. I mean, I know this movie doesn't really go that far into fantasy until the very end, but I'm guessing that was just the reason.
Okay, yeah, because that's an interesting take. Why would you make a brand new country? Is it maybe because in the eyes of the kid, he's never seen the country, so it's all foreign to him, maybe?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I think there are a lot of allegorical elements to this movie that I don't necessarily get or don't know if they landed. I mean, I think that whole end is supposed to mean something because it kind of, the snake eating its own tail, it all comes back around.
Sure.
So I think maybe just the absurdity of the things that happen to him kind of mixing in kind of adds to that absurdity a little bit. But yeah, it definitely could be that, but I'm not sure. I never thought of that.
I just thought of it off the top of the dome, man. It all just came bubbling up.
So then the kid drives through the scenic American Southwest in a nice Mustang, drives up to Wagon Wheel, which is just a really shitty diner, orders a cup of coffee and doesn't drink it, then gets hassled by some dude that asks him how he bought the car. He says he sold his stamp collection when he was younger, and that's how he got all his money. And then I think that guy freaks him out, so he just kind of departs. and drives on. We then see two dudes dragging an old, nearly unconscious man and then eventually toss him into a stream.
Are we sure he's not dead?
He is.
He looks
he's dying.
very dead.
He's dying. He's bleeding out in the stream.
Yeah, he's very much alive before they toss him.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was trampled to death at the diner, and then they just this movie does, to get rid of all of its problems, they just toss them places. It's effective, but kind of frowned upon.
The way they throw this old man into the stream is mirrored by something else that happens at the end of the movie.
Right.
So our kid, whose name is Gus, stops to take a piss, which he does a bunch of times in this movie, then washes his face in the same stream where the old man is currently bleeding out. But he has no idea. Then Gus drives on and spots a fancy sign that says, "Play Motorama." And he gets really excited because apparently he knows what this means. He arrives at a Chimera gas station, where the gas station attendant is currently flying a kite. The gas station attendant's name is Phil, and he talks about the kite itself and how he got his picture taken with a police officer, and he stuck it on the kite so he could show the picture to God to show that he's an honest citizen, and hopefully this will lead to his absolution when he dies. He doesn't say God by name, but he says putting it up there closer to him, he says.
Yeah, he just uses the pronouns like him and he and them.
Yep.
So
Gus is about to leave. Before he does, he asks for some Motorama cards, and Phil looks high and low, can't seem to find any. Apparently this is like an old ongoing contest that apparently doesn't expire. So seems like nobody's asked for these cards in quite a long time. So Phil can't seem to find them. And then the police officer that Phil took a picture with shows up for some gas and starts looking over the Mustang. Gus tries to hide from the cop in the gas station and finds a pack of Motorama cards. The cop sees Gus in the gas station and asks him who owns the Mustang. Gus says it's his dad's, who's in the bathroom, and then the cop leaves.
I love that Phil and the cop shake hands and then they get their photo taken.
That's a terribly boring life, by the way. Yeah, I shook hands with the sheriff, and that's the biggest thing that's happened in this county.
Yeah, I think the picture taking was just in case he didn't realize, this is the cop that he took the picture with.
And that cop totally abuses his power, right? Because he doesn't pay for the gas, he doesn't pay for the food in the convenience store, and then he just kind of has his way.
So what you're saying is all cops are bastards.
That's exactly what I'm saying. We continue the proud tradition of ACAB. They called this a movie.
Every time there's a cop in one of the movies we watch, they're usually pieces of shit. Although this guy's really not a piece of shit. He's just taking advantage of the things that Phil is offering to him. But anyway, the cop leaves and Phil accosts Gus saying he shouldn't lie to police officers, and then he just assumes that Gus is a murderer. And Gus just says, "No, I'm not a murderer. I'm just the fact that I'm 10 years old and I'm driving around."
And what a weird conclusion to jump to.
Yeah.
You must be a murderer. What? I'm 10. Why would you not just immediately jump to he's running away?
Right.
And why is everyone so dumb in this movie? Why can't anyone tell a 10-year-old apart from a little person?
I don't know. So Phil apologizes and says he has to work out and how he's working on his own salvation to try and make sure he gets into heaven. And Gus, for some reason, acts like a real dick and undoes the string on the kite, and the kite goes flying away. So Phil goes running, chasing after it, and Gus drives off, and then Phil gets hit by a semi. Yeah. While listening to some badass generic rock music, Gus pulls into a hotel. And the motel owner is played by Jack Nance from Twin Peaks. And his only worry is that Gus is trying to sneak a girl in without paying extra. And Gus goes into the motel room and reads up on the Motorama contest. Essentially, he's got to collect all the letters that spell out Motorama. And if he does, he'll get $500 million. Contest never expires. One thing that I should note, trying to not spoil it, but let's get it says specifically that he will, if he collects them all, he will be eligible for a $500 million prize, and that comes into play at the end, but he doesn't realize it.
There's a weird scene in the hotel part where he's peeling the stickers off of the cards, and he doesn't get all the letters right away, and he looks at himself in the mirror, and he kind of turns into a businessman who gives himself a pep talk. Yep. So I figured it was going to be one of those movies where it was almost like Ernest, where he kind of changes characters.
Sure.
So I thought the kid was maybe going to go into his imagination, but it's never brought up again. and he never changes characters again. So it's all just, it was useless. This movie does not make a lot of sense.
I think they do the mirror trick one more time later in the movie. But
it's not the kid. He sees himself as an old man.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes. That's another out of nowhere.
Yeah. So the motel owner comes back and he tells him if he finds any squirrels to give them to him, because this motel owner is interested in catching squirrels. It has nothing to do with anything. So Gus spends all night opening up all the cards to minimal success, and then he has a vision of himself in the mirror as a kid in a suit and cigar, which he gives himself a pep talk, basically like, you didn't really think it was going to be that easy, did you? The morning comes, and Gus finds the motel owner with 7 squirrels in a box that he's trying to suffocate with carbon monoxide from his truck, and Gus leaves him doing just that.
Did anyone notice the dead dog in the truck?
No.
Go back and look. I think there's a dead dog in the truck that is never pointed out.
That makes sense in this movie.
Yeah, 100%.
Gus drives on and almost hits a squirrel of his very own, but he manages to swerve around it, and then he drives past that cop that we saw at the gas station and ducks past as he drives by. And then he winds up at a scenic overlook where there's a whole bunch of families, and a young couple sees Gus and his Mustang and asks to use the Mustang to fuck. Gus is too busy opening up Motorama cards, so they help themselves to the backseat, and then they fuck.
Yeah, it's a pretty good scene. It would have been pretty good to see this in Escape from L.A., because that's where it would have been warranted.
Yeah. There's something unnerving about juxtaposing a woman climaxing with a kid excited to open up Motorama cards. But then he gets excited. He gets one of the cards that he needs, and then he moves on. And Gus continues his journey, and his tire blows, so he's able to get it to a gas station run by Garrett Morris and Michael J. Pollard, Oscar nominee Michael J. Pollard. Gus annoys them about Motorama cards until they give him a bunch off screen. Then we cut to Gus on the side of the road, unsuccessfully opening a whole bunch of cards. And the cop shows up again, asking where his dad is, and he says he's taking a piss on the side of the road. So the cop is like, man, your dad sure takes a lot of pisses. And he's like, yep. And then he's like, okay, bye.
See you later.
He does the old bye.
Big gulps, huh? Well, see you later.
We then get a montage of Gus opening a whole bunch of Motorama cards, and he's successfully collecting 4 of what he needs so far. He then stops at a diner where Flea works as a busboy, and he realizes that he spent basically most of his money on Motorama cards. And apparently the diner's theme is Groucho Marx glasses in this film, which is weird because they have a vending machine that has Groucho Marx glasses, and all the patrons are wearing Groucho Marx glasses. And then Flea throws Gus's food away, so Gus poses as the health inspector using the Groucho Marx glasses and levies fines against the kitchen staff so that he could fill his wallet with some money. He also tells Flea to look for some tubing and a can so he could siphon gas from another car, and Flea knocks out the restaurant manager with a frying pan, which has no bearing on the plot, but he does it.
It's always interesting when I realized that this was Flea, that he must have had one hell of an agent back in this time period, that he's just randomly popping up in these movies. I'm like, again, I wasn't alive back then, so I'm like, I know Red Hot Chili Peppers were popular around this time.
You were alive in 91?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like when he's in Back to the Future, stuff like that.
Which you're also alive for.
Yeah, he plays Michael J. Fox's boss.
Oh, man,
Back to the Future.
I'm that old?
Yes.
We're all that old. Yeah, that was Back to the Future, too.
Yeah. And the first Back to the Future came out the day after I was born, so I lived in a world without...
There we go.
Well, Flea's not in that long.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, Mark was definitely alive in 91. Unless...
That was not my...
Still pretend he's 30.
Yeah. I turned 29 in a week and a half.
Right. Us old guys.
Well, my point was being that of the members of Red Hot Chili Peppers, it's just interesting that Flea shows up in all these movies. So I haven't read much on his background. Maybe, do you guys know? Was he like auditioned for stuff and a child actor? Like, it's always a weird thing to me. Maybe it's just me.
Maybe it was just that Anthony Kiedis was too busy shooting up heroin under
the bridge.
Under the bridge at the time.
Yeah, Anthony Kiedis had a very messed up lifestyle.
Yeah.
So the only logical sense was Flea.
Yeah, I mean, he is in a lot. As early as The Outsiders in 1983, as Soch number 3. So
I wonder if he wanted to be an actor before becoming a musician.
Maybe. He was also in Thrashin' and Less Than Zero. Yeah, he was in a lot of stuff even before Back to the Future 2.
So he's the reverse Keanu Reeves?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, with a name like Flea, it's probably, people are going to remember you.
Yeah. And you know what? He never takes himself seriously in any of his roles. So it's kind of perfect to have him because you get the name and you get the over-the-top performance.
And he's kind of weird looking.
Kind of.
Yeah.
What's this kind of? He's very weird looking. Wasn't he in Back to the Future? Oh, not. I'm sorry. Jeez.
Man,
the Big Lebowski.
I think he was.
He was one of the nihilists, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was also nihilist number 2, Kiefer, also in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Right. I mean, all of these are tailor-made for him.
And the Psycho remake, what?
With Vince Vaughn?
Yeah.
Ugh, weird. Well, good for him. We need Flea back.
Flea's got a pretty good agent, I guess.
He should be in the next Mad Max movie.
Yeah, he probably should be.
Right. And it's a crime that he never plays the bass in any of the movies he's in. He should just always have a bass with him.
He could have been sense. He could have been the guitarist in
Mad Max.
Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep laying down some sick bass beats. Come on. Total missed opportunity.
Yeah. So the kid manages to siphon gas out of a couple's car, but they catch him putting it into his car, and the guy hits him and knocks him out. The guy played by Jack Klompus from Seinfeld. You remember him? He was Morty Seinfeld's friend.
Yes, he was the guy who... He's on the board.
Astronaut pen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take the pen. Come on, take the pen.
Well, it was like a bribe or something like that, right?
Well, Seinfeld, he says, "Oh, this is a cool pen. It's like you can write upside down." And like, I could totally use a pen like that. And then he's like, take the pen, come on. And then he begrudgingly takes it. And then his parents are mad at him for taking the pen.
Right. I do remember that. He is kind of I don't think he reads the room correctly in this movie because he just kicks the shit out of this kid.
This is one of the first moments where this kid just gets put through the ringer. He punches this kid right in the goddamn eye.
I think, remember at the beginning of the show where you said at one point it takes a turn? I think this is where that turn is, and it takes a hard left turn.
Yeah, this is where it gets wild.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
This Mary Warrenoff plays his wife. So they knock him out and they take him to either their house or a motel room. Kid comes to and they've officially kidnapped him because he is now tied up. And they call him a thief and don't really know what their plan is. But then he apologizes and says, "Hey, I kind of need a doctor to look at this eye." And they kind of begrudgingly call a doctor. And then the kid passes out. The doctor comes in and he says he needs to operate on their son's eye or else the kid's going to lose it. So they say it's their decision, and they decide that the kid should lose an eye because it'll help him build character.
No, they're not wrong. I mean, you do have a lot. That's an obstacle to overcome. So
sure.
Thanks, I guess.
So then Gus passes out again. He has a dream about Drew Barrymore telling him he won Motorama, but then she says he didn't. And he sees cockroaches on his feet, and he wakes up to Jack Klompus putting lipstick on him. And that's 8 seconds that Drew Barrymore is in this movie, despite being heavily featured on the cover.
Yeah.
And it looked like it was the kid version of Drew Barrymore, right?
Oh yeah, she's probably 19 in this movie at this point.
Well, that's
1992. How old would she have been?
I got really nervous when you said that there were boobs in this movie because I immediately went to Drew Barrymore. I was like, oh no, this can't be good because she looked really young and
she could have been even. She might not even been 18 at that point. Let's see. Of course, I have to click see full cast to get her.
She would have been 16.
Oh yeah.
Man, that would have been. And I know you said that the 90s were a wild time, Ant, but I don't think that would have flown in 1991.
Well, luckily we don't have to deal with that because she was not the one showing the boobs. So he has that dream, and then he wakes up, and did they rape this kid?
It's heavily implied that he was molested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, Jack Klompus putting lipstick on him, and he passes out, and then he wakes up And the two have obviously fucked, at least, while he's in the... And he wakes up with all that lipstick that Jack Klomp has put on him smeared all over his face. So they don't specifically say it, but we're, I guess, meant to assume that he just got diddled.
Or something. It's a night he's happy he's probably not going to remember.
Yeah, I mean, he lost an eye, so that's terrible. And then you just add insult to injury. Yeah, not great.
Made-up country... This made-up country is a perfect place if you want to be the worst person ever, because you get away with literally anything in this movie.
Yeah. There is no ramifications for anything that anybody does, except for the kid. The kid, the worst thing he does is that he pulls that string on that kite, and I think that's where he starts to get punished. After that,
it was God, you're saying.
I think that is kind of the ending of this. Yes.
Interesting. You see, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
That would be a very good way to change or to make the movie better. It just all turns out to be acts of God.
Yeah, I think this is sort of I think this movie is sort of the Odyssey. He goes on a hero's journey of sorts where he is punished throughout until he goes back to the gas station, which not coincidentally has a "Be Fulfilled" sign there. So he is going to stay with Phil and make sure that he gets his absolution as well.
I have to remember to bring it up at the end. I feel like there's a continuity error with it, but when we get there, I'll bring it up.
Okay. So the kid wakes up in the morning and he runs off. He cleans himself up in an abandoned truck tire that's collected water and drives off. And then we get another scene of him opening up Motorama cards without collecting anything he needed. He winds up in a biker bar eating PB&J sandwiches where Meatloaf is there arm wrestling other people. And then he walks up to the kid and says, "Hey, why don't you take me on? We'll do $10 a round." And the kid's like, "I really don't want to because you're Meatloaf and you're just going to destroy me." And Meatloaf was like, "Come on, kid. I'll let you win a couple times if you start losing too much." So Gus doesn't want to, but then he sees the cop again, who he's trying to hide from, so he decides to play. And then Meatloaf just wipes the floor with him, just toying with him.
Why would you play the game to be incognito with the cop? Because as soon as he accepts the arm wrestling match, one of the guys yells, "Arm wrestling match over here."
Right.
So that's the opposite of laying low. So I kind of feel like the kid deserved to lose his shirt in this. Yeah. At least part of his shirt, as we come to find out.
Just the sleeve.
Yep.
Yeah, so they wipe the floor with him, and Gus winds up being in debt to Meatloaf for $50, but all Gus has is $20. So then he's like, "I'm going to level with you guys. The reason why I can only give you $20 is because I'm on a mission to collect the last 4 letters of the Motorama game. And I'm going to win $500 million. So Meatloaf and his crony tell him they could help him get those last 4 letters. So they force a tattoo on him that says Tora, T-O-R-A, the last 4 letters he needs. He lost an eye, and he's now has a tattaoo forced upon him.
I think he has multiple tattoos.
Oh, yeah, he's got an entire sleeve, up and down.
Yeah. And he doesn't take proper care of it afterwards either. Mm-mm. He gets in the sun immediately.
They also just rip the sleeve off the jacket.
Right. Yeah. Could have just taken the jacket off.
So at this point, Gus is low on cash, and he winds up getting himself a cup of coffee and a car wash, and then winds up at a picnic area where some kid makes fun of his one eye, and Gus is like, "Oh, it's fine. I used to be just like that kid." So the woman takes it upon herself to make that free pass to make fun of that kid's eye. So she eggs on her kid to make fun of Gus just a little bit more, which is a weird moment.
Yeah.
And then when the kid sees Dick Miller playing horseshoes with his kids, man, if Dick Miller is having kids at that age, man, good for him.
Not good for kids.
No. He lasted about 20 more years, almost. So he's playing horseshoes. Gus comes up to him and is like, "Hey, why don't you make it interesting? Let's play each other in horseshoes." And Dick Miller doesn't really want to, but he goads him by just telling him that his kids are going to think he's less of a man, basically, if he doesn't play him in horseshoes. And then Gus is apparently a phenom in horseshoes and winds up beating Dick Miller for $100 worth.
With one eye.
Yep, with one eye. And Dick Miller says he can't afford the $100, but then he's like, but maybe there's a way. So he gives $100 to Gus, and then he takes the kids to go to the bathroom, and then he ditches them there right in the picnic area, and him and his wife drive off.
And the wife is totally okay with it.
That's the end of that chapter.
And that's the oddest shot of the movie is they cut back to the kid just sitting there holding hands, and the kids don't know what to do.
It's so depressing. Like, what is going on in this movie? And what does losing $100 have to do with getting rid of your kids?
I guess he's just like, I can't afford these kids anymore.
It's two less mouths to feed on the road home.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Joe Dirt origin story.
Exactly. Yeah. So then we get another montage of Gus stopping at some gas stations and opening cards. He's opening cards while he drives. He opens up a T, one of the letters he needs, but doesn't realize it and throws it out the window. And he slams on the brakes when he realizes it, and it's sitting on the ledge of a dam. Tries to grab it, but then wind sweeps it up and into the air. It hangs in the air for a while, then falls into his hands. So now he has a T. Then he goes back into his car and immediately opens up an O and an A. So now he's got 3 of the 4 that he needs. So at this point, I think the screenwriter realized he's 2/3 through his script, and the kid still needs 4 letters. So it's just boom, boom, boom. He's got 3 of them.
That's like opening up a pack of Pokemon cards and getting the Charizard immediately. Yep. And then a couple more holographic cards. You're like, oh, okay, we just got to throw these in there. Let's do this.
With this happening so quickly, I'm just looking forward to the Barry Sills cut.
Yeah. There's another 2 hours where he has to go through the gauntlet to get those other 3 letters.
Yeah. He continues driving and opening up cards as he goes. 2 things. A, there was at points where I thought there was going to be like a gust of wind that blows through his windows and blow all the cards off of the dashboard because he has them just all lined up. And 2, he litters like a motherfucker.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that. Every time he pulls a card that's not a winning card, he throws it out the window. He deserves every bad thing that happens to him.
See, he's not realizing the bad things he's doing is why he keeps getting punished.
Yeah. And we say it again, the 90s were a different time.
This is a weird it's like a weird thing to have like a morality tale and like a hero's journey for a kid that's trying to escape an abusive family.
Yeah.
It's like, Odysseus in the Odyssey was punished for being prideful and an asshole. I mean, this kid's an asshole, but like he's coming from a terrible like living situation.
But he doesn't make it easy on himself.
It's weird to thrust this upon a kid, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, he gets a guy ran over by a semi truck, right? Mm-hmm. He helps a man leave his kids behind, right? He bilks them out of money.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't do things that is worthy of punishment.
Yeah, he's far from the hero.
Yeah.
At this point in the movie, I'm super happy that he's getting put through the ringer, and I'm just like laughing to myself every time something happens.
Oh yeah, because it's like starting this movie, I didn't think we were going to witness a kid lose an eye.
No, yeah, me neither. I was very surprised when you said that.
Yeah. So the montage continues. Eventually, he comes upon a deserted gas station, a bunch of discarded cards, but not the R that he needs. He winds up saying "damn" a lot. Eventually, he makes it to Essex, which is a trippy state that has drug addicts, people shooting popes in the middle of the street, KKK cross burnings, and Essex is much less scenic than the rest of the movie, and it's probably just like LA highways mostly after that. As he's driving, he gets distracted and nearly gets hit by a semi, causing him to drive into a ditch. He stumbles out, and his hair is noticeably grayer than it was in all the movie, which was weird. And he comes upon another car accident. There's an old man and what I think is another Mustang, or the exact same car for obvious reasons, but the old man is just talking about how all he needs is the R in Motorama, and he's been spending his whole life trying to find the R. That was a nice touch to dress him exactly the same way the kid's dressed.
That was pretty good.
And the old man says he spent his whole life trying to find the R, even named all his kids R names, and hopes to appease God.
So it all just comes back to God.
Yeah. Although it's kind of weird because that's not why the kid's doing it. And if we're drawing the parallels,
it's where it ends, kind of. Yeah. I didn't make that connection because I had to rewind it where he almost hits the truck, careens off the side of the road, comes back, and the car's already there, and which implied that the accident already happened. I was like, wait a minute, did we miss something? What happened where did this guy come from? But now it makes sense, I guess, in that timeline, he didn't miss the truck, and the truck hit the car.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go back and watch, but I would guess that this is also the same old man that gets thrown into the stream at the beginning of the movie.
Maybe. I thought the other old man had like a mustache or something. He looked like a prospector.
I don't know. I would just guess because the way the same he's thrown into the stream the same manner that the kid is thrown out the window. So that parallel is there.
How cool would it have been if this was like a multiverse movie?
It sort of is, yeah.
Yeah. If they just leaned into it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So Gus steals the old man's car and drives off because there's no other way to explain how he gets the Mustang because he wasn't getting his car out. Gus comes upon another gas station and is helped out by a mute attendant named Elmer. And he goes to wash his hands in the sink and sees a reflection of the old man in the mirror. So we're drawing those comparisons. Elmer gives him a card, but he says that's the only one he has. As Gus drives off, he opens the card to reveal that it's the final R that he's been looking for. Gus decides to drive all the way to Nakatomi Plaza, which in this movie is the headquarters of Chimera Gas. He calls up Chimera Gas office from the lobby and talks to Miss Lawton. Miss Lawton tells him that he hasn't won. He's eligible for the grand prize. Then Gus hangs up on her. Go ahead, Mark.
The fine print. Always read the fine.
Yeah.
And it's not even very fine in this case.
No, he reads it aloud. He says, he doesn't register that, but he reads it aloud.
It's in bold uppercase letters.
Basically, yeah.
It would have been cool if he enters Nakatomi Plaza and the one henchman is there. The guy with the Fu Manchu.
Al Leong, whatever his name is.
How cool would that have been? He's like one of the security guards or something like that.
Or the one that looks like Huey Lewis.
Yeah, that would have been so cool.
Bet on the game.
Yep. Damn, I got $50 on them assholes. You can say it in this movie. It's rated R.
Yeah. So Gus hangs up on her and then looks at the directory to find Miss Lawton's name. No tell if he saw William Clay's name there.
Oh,
then heads up to the office.
Same thing.
That'd have been great.
So good. Oh, damn it. I totally forgot about that part, but I'm glad you brought it up. Like, oh, that'd be so cool if he's jumping up and down and you just see W. Clay.
Yeah. So Gus goes up to the office and the receptionist asks him to tell him where he got the R. He's like, I have no clue. I've been to every gas station up and down every state. How am I going to remember where I got the R from? But she's like, I have a big book of gas stations and just check it out here. Any of these look familiar? And then he just ignores her and walks into Miss Lawton's office and Miss Lawton tells him that no one is actually supposed to win Motorama. It also then turns out that Miss Lawton is just a secretary, and so she's just giving him the runaround. And he demands to talk to someone in charge, so Miss Lawton and security guard toss him out the window.
The funny part is, isn't this exactly what the McDonald's game was? Was that it was supposed to be like almost impossible to get Boardwalk in Park Place?
Oh,
because they had rigged it.
Yeah.
I think there's like one Boardwalk in circulation, and then like 1,000. Like it's always easy to get Park Place, but it's impossible to get Boardwalk. Yeah.
He's super condescending to the lady who's pretending to run the whole contest.
Yeah.
You're just a secretary. I want to talk to the head honcho. Like, damn, dude.
Secretary is a real job.
Right. And that's a person. You don't have to be a jerk about it. And did either of you guys notice that throughout the movie, he grows stubble? The kid grows stubble.
I didn't notice the stubble. I noticed the hair.
Yeah, he grows stubble.
He dyes his hair, right?
I don't know if it's dye or if it's from the accident where the dust gets in his hair.
Right.
But he looks, I think it's just trying to portray that a lot of time has gone by and he's, ragged. But yeah, go back and look. He has a 5 o'clock shadow at the end of the movie.
I didn't notice that. That's pretty good. So they toss him out the window, which is the second movie you could see someone fall out of the same building. But as he falls out the window, his eye comes back. He loses his tattoos and he gets his sweatshirt sleeve back and he lands in the water where we saw the old man get tossed. He then washes his face again in the water that he did the first time, and it's obvious we're back at the beginning of this movie before Gus started the search for Motorama.
Wouldn't it be cool if it was like the old man had some psychedelics in his blood and as he's washing his face, the psychedelics are getting into Gus somehow and he's just tripping balls?
Yeah. It's kind of, I'm trying to draw a comparison to what this movie is like in terms of like this wind up being he gets a second chance at everything.
Yeah, I don't know. And they never really say if he was just imagining this or if it
all happened.
If it all happened, because he never really makes any what's the word? Like he never makes any acknowledgement that this was all in his head.
Yeah. It's like A Christmas Carol, I guess, is the best
Sort of.
comparison.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's probably the closest.
Or Wizard of Oz, really. But that was a dream, and we don't know if this is a dream.
Yeah. With Wizard of Oz, we do know that she was, it was like she's knocked unconscious and she was dreaming it. This we have no idea. He could have just been thinking, this could possibly happen.
Mark, you grew up in Catholic school, right?
Yes.
So the story of Job.
Oh God.
So Job is basically put through the ringer because God and the devil have a bet to see if Job's devoutness of God can be tested, basically, right?
Yeah. The only thing I remember of that is the last part you said, was that it was, a test of his devoutness, because all the people around me used to say, when things get hard, this is just your trial of Job or something like that.
I'm going to check to see if Job loses an eye.
I know he kills his kids. He sacrifices his kids to God.
I think that's somebody else.
There's a lot of people God was kind of weird back in the day.
Yeah, so the joke is always that Old Testament God is an asshole.
Right, and then he has his kid and he settles down.
Yeah.
He mellows out. I gotta be good for my kid.
He turns, someone's wife into salt, because she turns around and looks back at Sodom as they're running away. He's just a dick.
Yeah, he didn't play games, man. Old Testament God didn't play around.
No.
We're devolving into a Bible podcast here.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if one of the things that happens to Job is that he loses an eye, because that would be an obvious parallel.
So
and
Gus is Job.
Yeah, I mean he kind of is, really. If you take it from not because he wasn't devout to begin with. If Phil goes on this journey, it
makes more sense.
But he openly kind of mocks Phil for his belief in God.
Yeah, he calls him schmuck.
And from then on, he goes on to a journey where does he wind up? He winds up back with Phil.
Right.
And fully embracing Phil's life and fully embracing the absolution that Phil believes in.
And that could be a reason why when he goes back in time, he goes back to after Phil.
That's what
he goes right before. No, he doesn't. He goes right before. Because
he's in the body cast.
Yeah.
Oh no, so Phil is, but in terms of the exact moments that we see Gus go through, he washes his face in the stream in the beginning. That's before he ever gets to Phil.
Oh,
correct.
Okay.
He passes the Motorama sign again. This time he scoffs at it, but he passes that sign before he ever gets to Phil. So Phil has been
a continuity error or something?
That's what I was.
I don't think it's a continuity error. It might be
just a flub.
No, I think it's intentional. I think they put Phil in a body cast for the humor aspect of it, but I think it's a mixed metaphor. I think closest to it. It's just like
they were expecting that if you made it this far into this movie, that the timeline being screwed up wasn't going to turn you off.
Yeah, I mean, because the events line up properly, and because the guy. We haven't gotten to it yet. We're almost at the end. The guy at the end that stops for gas runs into the same exact semi that runs over Phil.
Yeah.
So then how does he get into the body cast?
So it's all like, I feel like Gus is on his own timeline. Sort of like a time travel thing, but not really a time travel thing. So Phil's is a straight line, Phil's timeline is a straight line. Gus's is more of a circle.
So now are we entering Donnie Darko territory here?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Because that's how we're making it out to be.
I don't know if I fully understand Donnie Darko. But yeah, essentially from how I would map it, so Phil would be, it's tough.
We got to see if there's a Reddit link. This movie, at first glance, is really just a silly movie, right? Where you, like you said, they just kind of throw things up against the wall and they just go with it. But we've kind of broken it down to where there might have been a deeper meaning, and it just didn't come across that well.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. You see it's there, but I think it's I think the ambition of it kind of muddies it a bit. So you see those seedlings of there's something here in terms of a metaphor or an allegory, and it's almost there, almost getting to the goal line, but there's something there that's just at least messing us up in terms of what it all means.
But that's what was so good about this movie, I think, where, it's so dumb, but it's not absurd terrible. You know what I mean? It's like it said, it's not Tiptoes where it's just so bad. It made no sense. The writing was terrible. Like, this really, it was meant to be absurd. It was written to be absurd.
Sure.
And it pulled it off perfectly, even though, I hated the kid for the most part. Everyone is just batshit crazy in this movie, but it works. It all works together somehow, and it's hard to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to get back into this plot so we can finish up here. We don't have much left. All the way in the beginning, you never really see what Gus was making in the garage. You see it here and there in the context of what he uses for it, but he made these boots in order to use the pedals for the car. So he takes these boots off and he tosses them aside into like a canyon, and then he decides to hitchhike. Eventually he gets picked up by a man in a station wagon who seems like the nicest guy in the movie. Sings as he drives, and eventually he stops at a gas station, and we find out it's the same gas station from the beginning, and Phil's there in a full body cast, still pumping gas. Phil's having a little trouble doing that, so Gus helps him out, and then Gus tells the man that picked him up that he's going to get off here, and the guy's like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, it's not doesn't look like such a bad place to work." There's a help wanted sign, which was in the help wanted sign in the beginning. There's a conversation between Gus and the cop, and he was like, "Do you work here?" And Gus was like, "No." And then he's like, "Well, maybe you should, because it's a nice place to work." And so he kind of echoes that here. So Gus takes a job at the gas station with Phil. Phil not only happens to have a spare uniform, he also has Gus's name tag for him. And then just Gus and Phil wait around for cars. And in the morning, a car pulls up, and the guy says he just won $1 million in Vegas. Asks Gus if he wants to touch his money, and then almost slams the trunk on Gus's fingers. Takes a piece of gum from Gus and then drives off. Then he gets hit by the same semi that hit Phil in the beginning. And then Gus and Phil continue to wait for cars. That's the end. It's living out a solemn life of happiness with Phil.
I love that even the nicest man in the movie that picks him up as a hitchhiker has like a very dark line. He says something like, "Oh, I love singing because they don't let me do it at work," or something to that effect. And it's just like, okay, like that's really dark.
Yeah, you can't do it on the job.
Can't do it on the job. That's what it is. Yeah.
This movie ends on such a dumb line too. It's Phil and Gus just hanging out in the sun, and it would have been cool if they just ended it there. Who knows what's gonna happen next? Just almost like a The Graduate kind of ending, where they're just hanging out, not doing anything. Life goes on. But Gus asks Phil if he listens to the radio, and Phil says, "No, I don't listen to music." And then Gus says, "I like music." End of the movie.
I like the little moment though, of the little moment of affection that Phil shows in the body cast.
Oh, he gives him a little tap on the shoulder.
A little tap on the shoulder. As
the attaboy.
He just And that's the movie. Yeah, it was a trip, man.
Yeah.
I think we got into places of conversation that I was not expecting. But
I was not expecting Job to come up in Call This a Movie podcast.
But I think sussing all this out, it kind of it just came out up to the surface.
Don't let anyone say that we don't get deep on They Called This a Movie.
Yeah,
we're intellectual AF.
Is there anything you would do to make this movie better?
Yeah, I like the idea of it just being a bad trip, where Gus drinks the blood of the old man and just goes on a bad trip, man. And this movie spelled drugs from the get-go, really. Or what if he was dead the whole time? His parents killed him. His father killed him. And it's just
shit.
How dark would that be?
I believe
pretty damn dark.
I believe other podcasts would call that a Jacob's Ladder scenario.
Oh yeah, with Tim Robbins was dead the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that would have been nuts, man. In the beginning of the movie, we see the drill drilling in. What if it's the drill into the kid, and it was just never shown? It was like that, and this is what he was dreaming of as he died.
That'd be crazy.
Don't let anyone say we don't get dark on this podcast. That was too dark even for me, to be honest. I'm so sorry.
What about you there, Mark?
The only thing I would have had it been, I would have much rather have liked it being a drug trip than the actual ending. It's really the ending that I would change. I'm assuming my dislike of the first 2/3 of the movie has more to do with my emotional state at that point watching it. So maybe if I go back and see it again, I'll enjoy the absurdity. I just didn't like how they did the switcheroo and then it got all confusing. Like if it ended up being that he passed out on that side of the road from heat stroke or a bad trip and dreamt the whole thing for the most part, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Just change that ending up, make it a different ending. He can still end up with Phil.
Okay. To be honest with you, I wouldn't change much. I don't hate how the ending kind of wraps back around. I feel like I would love it to be a little more clear, but maybe that's just me not getting it. So I don't know if I could really say that I could fault the movie for that. Yeah, it's wild. That's the reason why I like it, is that it's just so weird, and some of it doesn't make any sense. I kind of appreciate when movies don't really hold your hand. I love the fact that this is a movie starring a 10-year-old boy, and he says fuck a handful of times, and it earns its R rating. That's very product of its time. This is one of my favorite movies that we've done in a long time. Probably going back as far as Joseph Minion's last movie he wrote, which was Vampire's Kiss.
Tune in to Anthony's next episode where it's just boring as fuck.
Yeah. You guys got anything else, or you want to plug your shit and get out of here?
Go watch this movie and let us know if you think we're even remotely close to the same parallels that we're drawing here. Because I would love to hear if anyone else has the same kind of ideas about this, because this movie is definitely left up to interpretation. But yeah,
it is on Amazon Prime. It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so I mean 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, right? Not terrible. Worth a watch if you go by Rotten Tomato scores. But yeah, other than that, where you could find me, Diaquino122 on Twitter, at Stranger Damies on Twitter as well, and on Instagram. We just reached 800 followers, so we're closing in on 1K, man.
Nice.
Yeah, join the revolution, friends. We're the wave of the future. Follow us on there. We love to chat with people. It's a very good community. And yeah, that's it for me.
Great.
Yeah, so the normal podcast plug, we have Stranger Damies every Wednesday. That's strangerdamies.podbean.com. You can get us on iTunes, Google Play, basically anywhere you can get a podcast. Just search Stranger Damies. Every other Monday, which means we release an episode this Monday, we do the Game Vault podcast, which is myself and friends of They Call This a Movie, Jen and Tom. We do video games. We play a retro game every episode and just talk about that. Again, airs every other Monday. You can find us iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. We stream mostly. I think we're going to be pretty consistent, at least 4 to 5 days a week. The 5th day being we do the retro roulette game every other Monday on stream. But weekly, you'll have Wednesday. Right now, we're playing Destiny 2 on that. Thursday, I play American Truck Simulator, where we just bullshit about things that have happened throughout the week in video games. And Friday or Saturday, depending on when we record the podcast, is our Dead by Daylight stream with Jen. And then on Sunday, sort of just something to wind down with. We've been playing Civilization. Dan came within like 3 to 4 turns of actually winning it, which was kind of amazing. So be sure to watch the video on demand on YouTube, where all of our streams go up to afterwards. So the Twitch is Game Vault Pod, and we're everywhere, social media, Game Vault Pod. So check us out.
Okay, yeah, and that's going to wrap it up for They Call This a Movie. We are They Call This a Movie, and you can find us at theycallthisamovie.podbean.com. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram under the Main Damies umbrella, so you could find us there. Just look for the Main Damie, and we'll pop right up. And you could get They Call This a Movie on all podcast streaming apps, so Stitcher, Google Play Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, obviously. Look for They Call This Movie, and we should be there. If you're there, you might as well give us a 5-star review, which would be helpful if you've got time. I'm sure you do. A lot of us are just staying in the house. Get right in those reviews. It will help us out a great deal. You have no idea. We are a proud member of Geek Vibes Nation. You can find them at gbnation.com and on all social media platforms. Just look for Geek Vibes Nation. They'll pop up. They've got a bunch of great shows. Scene and Nerd, Two Nerdy Girls or something like that. Top 10 with Tia. I promise you one day I will write these down and there will be more shows that I mention. But there's something for everyone there. Sports are probably getting back up soon, so they're probably going to have some sports shows. If you're into geek culture, they've got plenty of people that are super into geek stuff, and they all got shows there. So that's Geek Vibes Nation. gvnation.com is their main website. If you have any comments for us, any suggestions for what movies to talk about, hit us up, themaindamey@gmail.com, or feel free to hit us up on Twitter as well. That's probably where we're the most active. And I'm at Antelvec on Twitter. Hit me up there too. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. This week was Motorama, and it was directed by Barry Shills. So for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony Del Vecchio telling Barry Shills to go fuck himself.